Tuesday and Thursday here on the Big 550 KTRS. Tony Messer, are you there?
I'm here. Good to see you, McGraw.
Good, Tony.
Or talk to you at least.
Yeah, sure. You've been on the show now. I mean, in one form or another for years, and I've been reading you for years before you started coming on the show. And I got to tell you that of all of your columns, and I've agreed with some, disagreed with some, and the columns you have shed light on this veterans home is probably some of your finest work. You've come and written about it at stltoday.com. You've come and talked about it on the show. Your last column, that now they finally have a legit report about this veterans nursing home, and it turns out it was much worse than any of us ever thought.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't necessarily worse than what a lot of the family members were saying early on, but the complete report, or at least the preliminary investigation that I have, that's about 60 pages that the governor's office released to me, it's really damning. It shows massive problems in understaffing, over medication, too many pressure sores and bed sores, under training, forced overtime that just leads to this understaffing that they have, and the problem building and building and building and getting worse and worse under Rolando Carter. And it validates everything that the family members and the veterans and their advocates were saying. And it also really sheds light on the other supposed investigations. You know, this is the part of the story that I'd like to see not forgotten. The governor stood by some previous investigations, and one of those investigations was done by the VA here in St. Louis by the feds. I filed an open records request with the federal government for those reports going back for the last 3 or 4 years. I still haven't gotten those from the feds, but somebody needs to hold not just the Missouri Veterans Commission accountable, not just the administrator accountable. Those bits of accountability have taken place, but how did this happen? And how did these sham investigations come out that were so significantly different than what this final independent investigation came out from? And we're not talking just a little bit of apples and oranges. This final report, which I posted online at stltoday.com with my last column on it, I mean, it's just devastating. And that's what we were doing to our veterans for at least a year, if not longer.
And is this the only veterans home that we're worried about? Because there are other veterans homes around the region.
Yeah, there's 7 veterans homes in the state, and there's a couple different things. One, I'd like to think that we need to figure out what's going on in those other veterans homes, and allegedly the governor is doing some reporting, some investigation into that as well. The problem is going to be the accountability. One of the basic monthly reports that I asked for from the Missouri Veterans Commission on the St. Louis Veterans Home is what they call a key factor report. It gives some of those statistics. How many urinary tract infections were there this month? How many bed sores? How many people died? How many problems are they having? I asked for those reports and still haven't received them. They deny them under the Sunshine Law. So if we're going to investigate the other 7 homes, there has to be a willingness by the Veterans Commission to hold itself accountable under public records laws. And if that's not the case, then the governor's going to have to get somebody outside to look into it to see how those places are performing. And then it gets bigger than that. If we're really going to keep on this, there are veterans who stay at private homes in the St. Louis region funded by the federal government. What happens in a lot of cases is if you're a veteran and you qualify for that sort of nursing home care, sometimes you get into the home, but there's only 300 slots approximately at the St. Louis Veterans Home. Maybe you get into one of the other homes in the state, or they say basically, here's your voucher, go get private nursing care. And I have heard anecdotally from some family members that some of the private care facilities that are taking care of veterans have some of the same problems as the St. Louis Veterans Home. And so I don't think it's a problem that we can just drop and hope that it's fixed now.
What kills me about this whole story is an Eric Greitens supporter reluctantly came to you. It clearly doesn't like you. You've said on the show, but couldn't get any attention anywhere else. Republican elected officials came to you. You were the mouthpiece for this, and a governor who was a veteran who started a committee called "The Mission Continues," who rode into office as "We will take care of veterans," sat and did nothing while everybody was trying to get him to pay attention to this problem.
Yeah, and what the governor says is that he didn't do nothing. He ordered these other investigations. And then when, after 2 or 3 columns from me, Senator McCaskill and Senator Blunt, one a Republican, one a Democrat, wrote a very professional, nice, bipartisan letter to the governor saying, hey, we're hearing these things, we're seeing this evidence, we really think you should do an independent investigation. The governor laughed at them, his fellow elected officials. He sent them a sarcastic, snotty letter that said, you might have noticed if you check Google, I've already done investigations. We can't forget that that's how this happened. The governor didn't want to do another investigation. He didn't want to be guilted into it. He didn't want his now rival, Lieutenant Governor Mike Parson, who was also working on this, to get any credit. He didn't want the U.S. senators to get any credit. So he said, go to the Google. I've already done the investigations. Well, no, he hadn't. And if he had, or the people under him had, then they need to be held accountable. One of those investigations was by his director of public safety, Drew Juden. So does he trust that Drew Juden did a good investigation? The other folks in the Missouri Veterans Commission have been held accountable. Is the governor going to admit, hey, you know what? I was fooled. I believe these other investigations. Obviously, I've now acted. He's clearly acted. Not only has he acted, he provided the new investigation to me from my Sunshine Law request when his new Missouri Veterans Commission, with his new appointees, still refused to provide it to me. So there is some level of accountability. The governor has learned, even if he won't admit that there were mistakes made earlier. But as you rightly point out, this is a long saga. It took a lot of people who are friends of the governor to really put a lot of pressure on him and to go to the media to get this story out there. And that's really unfortunate. That's a sign of a political system, or at least of some politicians who are much more worried about their personal headlines and ambition than they are the people that they're elected to serve.
We should say, Tony, in your column, stltoday.com, that the woman who had initially came to you is quoted as saying that there is change in the nursing home for the veterans. Slow, but there is change going on.
Right. That was Sherry DeJournay. She's one of her father lived at St. Louis Veterans Home. She and some of the other family members that I've spoken to and advocates, they definitely believe change is coming, that things are happening. It's a little slow, but you know, they're going to keep on it. There have been improvements made because of the actions that the governor finally took. Hopefully they'll continue to take. One of the underlying factors that can't be forgotten, and I try to mention it as often as I can, Missouri is has the lowest paid state workers in the nation, and specifically in this sort of area, certified nursing assistants, people that are doing health care work on behalf of seniors and veterans. We pay our state workers who do that kind of work less than anywhere in the nation. That's part of the problem here.
Also, we don't have time to talk about this, but the question is, why did the veterans need a special nursing home, right? Aren't their needs very similar to seniors who are not veterans?
They absolutely are, but this is a decision that lawmakers made years ago that the federal government has money for them, and they think this is a place where the state should be in that business. And if the state shouldn't be in that business, then what should be happening to make sure the veterans are getting care elsewhere?
Yeah. Tony, have a good day. Thanks for checking in. Good stuff.
Hey, good to talk to you.
STLtoday.com, Tuesdays and Thursdays. You love them, you hate them.